was laying in bed and I was like, I have back pain. I'm gonna lay down for an hour. I was like, Jade can wait.
Yep.
I woke up at 10:30. I said, hmm. No.
And at that point, I
And
was also napping. Otherwise, I would have just done the thing, but nope.
well, you have a show that you're watching, so it feels like you're pretty occupied anyway.
I know. I need to be able to walk away from it. It's getting really bad.
It's walk away from it, like how this team should walk away from a few of its players at the trade deadline.
Yeah.
Anyway, welcome back to Keeping Up with the Seattle Kraken. That's your cold open. We had a week off this past week because, well, outside of Kako being in Four Nations, and I think he only had the one assist
I think so, yeah.
in the what, two games that he played because he didn't play the first game. Um, I mean, you can only do so much when you've got one guy who's playing what, like third line, fourth line minutes maybe in that tournament. You can only do so much with that. So anyway, yeah, we are back. It's nice to be back. Um the Kraken played two games this past week and they've got a few different moves that we'll discuss in this episode outside of those two games. Started off fresh out of the gate and I've been us and a few of our friends, hello again, Milo, have been worried about this back to back immediately out of the Four Nations break, right? Like playing the Florida teams in general isn't necessarily the most fun thing to do, and playing them back to back isn't great either. So, I mean, the Panthers game was fun. They were without Matthew Tkachuk. He suffered an injury during the Four Nations face-off. I think he missed a good chunk of the of one of the USA games, and then in the final, I think he missed a chunk of that as well.
Yeah, that
Um,
sounds right. It's like a hip tear or something from what I heard,
yeah,
read.
now the reports are that he might miss the rest of the season, which
But then
Jesus.
also, I was telling you before we started recording, I was reading 32 Thoughts and
Mm.
listening to Daily Frank Saravalli, whatever. And I think they both said that they're anticipating him being back at some point in the regular season, but that this is going to be a longer injury. Not that that's part of our team, but it's still good to know.
I
Plenty of
mean,
people are Panthers fans, so
Panther. Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, it's just fascinating, and then I'll get back on focus. But like the injuries he suffered during the Stanley Cup final, what, 2 years ago, where it's like he couldn't go to the bathroom on his own,
Hmm.
and like his body is just a wreck. So, hey, I mean, something karma, something. Anyway, yeah, the game against the Panthers, that's still a good team up and down the lineup. I mean, even being without Matthew Tkachuk is not something that like gave Seattle any betting odds or betting favors. Seattle was on the board first, Capo Caco, fresh out of the Four Nations break. It was funny. I think someone in our group chat was remarking that like how the broadcast was saying these guys should have fresh legs, and it's the guy who'd been playing a bunch over the break that scores first. So Kako gets a goal on the power play. It's really fun to me. Like I know the line, Jade, the
Hmm.
17-10-84 line has been incredibly productive, and it's essentially Seattle's first real top line in a while, or maybe ever. But seeing the names on this goal and Kako Benir's right is fun for the future. It's nice
Yep.
to see that. This was an interesting power play goal. It wasn't maybe anything super crazy or wacky. Kako just was able to get a lane driving right at the net, and was able to beat Bobrovsky 6 minutes and 32 seconds into the game, which I mean it's pretty nice. Um, Seattle happy to take that first period on the road. And after that goal in the first, they were only a shot behind the Panthers in terms of shots on goal. They only had 6 shots on goal in the next two periods each, which it's not good. That's not very good at all. Etu Luostarinen scores in the second period and sends us into the third period tied up, and that I'm sure that was a little bit nerve-wracking, right? Joey Daccord played incredibly well in this game. I mean, to no one's surprise, nice that he was able to get the Four Nations break off, so he could post his little Instagram posts, um, and Twitter posts too.
Hmm.
That's its own thing. But he played incredibly well. It's always this goes back to the very first episode of the show that we did, where it's like I saw how well that they did, like clogging the lane, clogging the slot, playing defensively, executing their defensive game plan, and then obviously having Joey play so well in the net. Um, like that's how good they can be. And it's just so annoying that they don't do it consistently. Like we've
Yep.
talked about that all the time that this show has existed. Jared McCann gets the eventual game winner in the third period. It's his first goal on an actual goalie, I think, since December 24th was the number that I saw. And his first goal in 10 games, the
I
last
don't think
one
they played on
being
Christmas Eve. Wouldn't it be the
no,
22nd?
probably. I don't think they played on Christmas Eve either. Yeah.
I think
Something
the
in
NHL
late.
takes a break on.
I think I bookmarked it. Let me. Oh, I have so much dumb shit in book. Oh, wow, I used it already. Jeez, sorry. Um, I think Mike Benton tweeted it out, so I'll look for Mike. But like the point remains, it was a long time coming for Jared to
Yeah.
score an actual goalie, and it was just tough because for so long he'd been your leading scorer. 22nd is right. Yep, Jade,
Yep.
of course, on the mark there. Um, And that this was a nice pass. Larson had a nice pass. I think he was right in front of the crease, and he found McCann just to the side, able to get that one there. So, and Shane Wright is second helper in this one. So two helpers for Shane in this game. Joey plays pretty damn well. Who are the first? Yeah, 3 stars: McCann, Decord, Lusterinen, Lusterinen. Um, I mean, again, like you played the Panthers really well at home. You lose in the shootout, which I mean,
Hmm.
again, with the talent that they have, Sasha Barkov, like I understand that, but just to play these good teams so well, granted, the 2 goals and then the 6 shots each in the last 2 periods, not good. Um, it's just so frustrating because if you bring this level of play to a San Jose, an Anaheim, a Chicago, right? Games you've lost earlier in the season that are, so to say, lesser opponents, right? We probably aren't in this situation where oh God, I haven't even looked how many points they're out right now. Um, I'll check. But like we're not in this situation where I'm just don't care anymore, right?
Hmm.
You're 9 points out. No, it's dead until you show me something miraculous.
Hmm.
I'm not getting my hopes up. Like,
Same. Yeah.
um, again, I'd rather be surprised by it than just like, because again, and we'll talk about the Tampa Bay game, but I like considering a few factors, I throw it out the window a little bit. Um, just these. They've the one of the funnier things about the Seattle Kraken over their tenure as an NHL franchise is that every single year, you know, the inaugural season, their faux playoff year, and then the last two disappointing mediocre seasons, they've found a way to beat the good teams, like in the NHL, every once in a while. Some teams less than others. They've only beaten Tampa Bay once. Um, like they've beaten Toronto, they've beaten Boston, they've like they've beaten Florida, they've beaten Winnipeg. They beat the Hurricanes in year one at home. Like
Hmm.
I still remember the wraparound goal that Marcus Johansson had to win that game. Like it's happened and it continues to happen, but the consistency level, um, year one, I throw there are a lot of things, but the last 2 years, it's been their inconsistencies, I think, largely
Yep.
over anything else. Inconsistency and a lack of talent. Like they have talent, don't get me wrong, but it's a lot
Hmm.
of mid. Like,
Very mediocre talent.
so yeah, I don't know. I just wanted because it's again, it's seeing the same thing over and over again, and I'm tired of seeing the same thing
Yep.
over and over again because we can only cover that in such detail outside of telling you, hey, we're seeing the same thing again and
Hmm.
again and again. Like
And then
the
at that point,
defensive,
everything just seems so repetitive. And, we're talking about the same two things every single week about
yeah,
how there's no compete and no uh, talent and no desire to win. And yeah, not fun to
like
listen to, not fun to keep talking about.
no, I mean it's like I can only do so much in that regard,
Hmm.
right? Like it is. So, and that's why the thing like I think RJ from Emerald City Hockey was saying it's like they need to like be fun even if you're gonna be bad. Like you need to be entertaining, you know.
Hmm.
Um so yeah, and then the Tampa Bay game was interesting just because I had wondered about this game for a while just because of, obviously the Grubauer move gives you really only one NHL level goalie on the roster at the time. And they'd ridden Joey so hard with his workload, just giving him all these games in a row. I was like, well, if they're still actively trying to be a playoff team, which it seems like they are, they haven't. I don't have a white flag around me, but they haven't waved the white flag yet. That
Hmm.
might change with the deadline next week. Um, but I think, like I was telling Jade before we started this, I'm worried that, and I might open this up for more of a discussion after the Lightning, after I go over some of the points about the Lightning game. But like, I'm worried that they'll lull themselves back into a sense of mediocrity and that they're close enough to make it and that they have enough of a chance that they won't do anything at the deadline to benefit the franchise going forward, i.e., trading certain guys like a Tanev, so on and so forth. So I am worried about that because, you know, I think changes need to be made. That's been obvious all year. And I don't think there ever was going to be such a massive fire sale. Like, I think people have talked about what they could do about a potential giant fire sale, but like any real reports, like you and I were talking about before we started, there's not been anything substantial lately, reporting wise, about them being involved in anything.
There's
Um,
been a few like little things that I've seen, but we can talk about that after Tampa. We
yeah,
can,
let
yeah,
me
I'll
wrap up
save
Tampa
it.
Bay. I mean, going through the first period, Seattle actually led the game in shots on goal, which was kind of funny. I caught a decent amount of this. I think I was actually recording our Mariners show during this. Um, yeah, get the first period. Stezka looked pretty solid. Alex Stezka makes his NHL debut in this one. I mean, I think he had been playing in Czechia leagues before he got signed to play with Coachella Valley. Um, and then he never appeared in an NHL game until this. He'd been riding the bench with Seattle earlier in the season, with Grubauer dealing with injury, but never appeared in a game. Um, he looked pretty solid. I mean, I won't complain at all about what I saw from him in this game. I've been worried about him on this show, and I think reasonably so, given what we know, right?
Mhm.
Like outside of just being an optimist and looking purely at the numbers, um, and reality, like I think it was reasonable to be a little bit worried.
Yeah.
And I mean, he was pretty solid against one of the better, if not one of the best, statistical offenses in the NHL. Whenever I look at like the goals per game, Tampa Bay's third in goals for per game right now, behind Washington and Winnipeg. They don't shoot a ton. Interesting. Yeah, they're 13th in shots for per game. That's weird. Okay. Anyway, yeah, against one of the better offenses in the league. Like, and this was a game, the final score will be very deceptive because Seattle was going into the third period no, down by a goal, just one goal. And um this kind of like flashbang happened in the third period where Nikita Kucherov and Luke Glendening score within what is this, less than 2 minutes of each other. Nick Paul gets an empty netter at the end. Shane Wright did score on a drive-by tip-in to make it 3-1 with less than 5 minutes left, but it's just ultimately too little, too late against an offensive team like Tampa Bay and Andrei Vasilevsky. Um, Vasilevsky. Oh God, has never lost to Seattle. He's 6-0 against Seattle. So
Good for him.
I don't know who they must have played when they beat Tampa Bay on the road in 23. It must have been, huh? I'll look that up some other time. It's not important. But yeah, I mean they played pretty decently well. I mean they dominated the shots in the second period, 18 to 10. Like they just were playing Andrei Vasilevsky. Like and why I say earlier in the show I'd throw this away is because you're playing Vasilevsky, you're playing the second half of a back-to-back against two of the top teams in the league. Um, and they're their first two games. Like I was listening to the audio from Dan Bylsma from practice 2 days ago, 2 days before the Florida game, sorry. And he expected there to be like some sloppiness for after guys. He was joking about guys being on the beach, probably, i.e., what Brandon Montour was talking about. And he was saying that Jordan Eberle was laughing because he had been practicing with the Firebirds and he was like in some game shape in a way, and he was laughing because everyone else seemed to be. I think the remark was they had red faces because of their tans, but they had red faces because of how hard they've been skating after too. So I was like, oh,
Yep.
all right, Dan, you comedian. Um, yeah, I mean, Steska played pretty damn well for this game, all things considered. Debut, lightning, like, getting the one goal of run support, like I mean, the save percentage isn't gonna be forgiving to him. I don't care. Like, I don't think he's a guy at this point in his career that'll worry about that. Unless at 28 years old, like he goes on this magical run, which I don't imagine he will.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, it was 37 shots for Seattle compared to 24 for Tampa Bay. Like, that's frustrating. But yeah, again, I'm not like if you were a few points out of a playoff spot, then I'd be like, okay, you needed this one. You needed to maybe empty the tank a little more. But
Hmm.
you're just not in realistic frame,
It's just not likely at
no.
this point.
So yeah. What we can get into kind of I mean, did you have any thoughts on either of those games?
No, because I slept through the Florida game and was which was totally an accident. I had an alarm set to wake up and didn't hear my alarm go off. And then the game yesterday, I was watching a different show. Which, by the way, if anybody needs a good show to binge, it's Quantico. It's on Hulu, and I can't turn it off. So it's really good.
Oh my God. Yeah. No, so no, we'll do this first. Yeah, I just with with Seattle where they are, right? They're 9 points out of a playoff spot currently, that last spot in the Western Conference. Um, yeah, Vancouver's holding on to that, and they're a mess. Like Vancouver and Calgary have kind of generally held on to the one of the last wild card spots. The top one's just always going to be Colorado just because of the fact that the top three teams in the Central have been so fucking good. Wow.
Hmm.
Okay, I used it early. Um, so like Colorado's gonna hold that spot, I imagine,
Yeah.
unless somehow they just take a free fall. But it's been like Vancouver and Calgary are the teams that have largely been in that second spot, and even them, they've had their own respective issues, you know. Um, and yeah, if Seattle had been able to do much of anything better, like they're not super far off if they play a little better in some of these games to force overtime. We got a comment on one of the last episodes that we did that was like it was just kind of tomfoolery, but I skimmed through it, and at the end it was like bad coaches only get to overtime. I was like, if this team got just to overtime a few more games, we're having a different conversation.
Yep.
Like, ugh, silly. So no, I mean, I talked about it, right? Like I'm generally worried that like last year they were more consistently like a mediocre. This year they're
Hmm.
less consistently mediocre. I'm just worried that they're gonna be in the same sort of mindset as they were last year, where they say, "Oh, we're close. We're gonna." I think the terminology from Ron Francis last year was that we want to give these guys the opportunity to go and try, and we owe him that much. And I'm
Yep.
like, sure. Like obviously they parted ways with Alex Wenberg. Um, that's a whole other discussion. Um, you know, and good for Wenny being in San Jose. Like that team does look like fun, even if they are bad. Um, God bless him and Felicia. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I'm worried that they're okay with being mediocre. And well, maybe I can talk a little bit about this. Uh, CEO Todd Lewicki was on the KJR does this like President's Day show every year where they um they have a bunch of the presidents of a bunch of different teams, not all of them, right? A bunch of different teams around the area give like a State of the Union kind of thing, right? And the wiki was on, and he said a few things that made sense to me, but kind of put people up in arms. Um, I'll only kind of mention what's relevant because he said some other things here. He said that ownership does want to win now. The goal is to be a sustained playoff team. He said that they fared well on the NHL player survey, specifically on the facilities, which is nice. Like outside of the hockey itself, you want people to actually want to be here and to
Hmm.
say good things about your organization and all that. Like it's always interesting when the NFL does that survey. And see which teams like treat families poor or their facilities are bad. Da, 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 da.
Hmm.
The kind of further on the ownership thing, he says we want to have a team that doesn't just make the playoffs but stays in the playoffs. Um, I didn't think any of this was crazy. I don't like I don't think he said anything wild. Like, and then the thing about ownership, um, he said that there are some areas the team can add and doesn't think they need to rebuild, which goes into the whole retooling thing that I think every one of us in the like Kraken Mediascape has talked about.
Hmm.
This past year, he cited, that they've got a new coaching staff, which I know Silvia, when we've had Silvia on, she has mentioned that consistently, right? The need to score more, which, duh.
Yep.
um Loss of your captain for a long part of the season, and he said, I don't think this is a rebuild, this is a reclamation, just a different fancy word for retool. Like, and people were like, oh, there are people who just wanted to tear it down, and people were mad, like that thought maybe the win now comment was that they buy at the deadline. I
Hmm.
don't think like that's not what they mean. It goes back to what we've talked about consistently throughout the show, um, and we talked about at different like media things that we've done, whether it's written or whatever, or stuff I've done like with like RJ, like considering that the NBA should be here in the next, say, 5 years, that the announcement should come in the next 5 years. The Celtics need to sell because David Bonderman, who passed, who's part of the Kraken ownership, had stake in the Celtics. He can't have stake in two teams, so they had to sell his stake. Then he died, so they've got to deal with that estate. The Celtics still need to sell. Um, but anyway, just imagine like the fact of the matter is that an NBA team is like more than likely coming here,
Hmm.
right? And adding
It's
to
like
the
almost
busy.
imminent at
Yeah,
this point.
yeah, imminent's great. Thank you.
Yep.
Like they're already in a crowded. Hello, hello. Zoom in on me, thank you. I know I'm not that pretty, but goddamn. Um, you're already in a busy sports city.
Hmm.
Do I need to reference the number of teams we cover? Right?
No.
And there's 10 of them that are pro. Okay. Like, and especially given with the NBA team that during your NHL season, the NBA is running during that season. The
Hmm.
NFL will be running during that season. Soccer is in kind of both just because they go into the winter, well, they go into the late fall and they start in the late winter. It's like there is
Baseball
overlap.
starts back up and spring
There's
training.
overlap, right? Like, and especially given that, the newness of this team has worn off. Yes, your branding is still great. That's never changed.
Hmm.
But like the novelty is gone. And it's not just, oh, I just want to go and see what it's like. That's gone.
Yep.
Like I think the vast majority of those people have done it already, and the people that do want to do it are either getting priced out or it's just not entertaining because they're not winning, right?
Which I think is, now that you say that, that makes me think that that's probably why we've seen so many visiting fans, or
Hmm.
so many away
Hmm.
jerseys when we're at games,
Yeah.
because it's people either traveling with their team because, we've never done a Seattle game before, so let's go check
Yes.
it out despite the price. And um also, I being a fan of teams that aren't in Seattle, I know that I really look forward to when the teams that I support come here, because then I get to go see them. And so yeah, I think that a lot of the newness has worn off.
Yeah, that's a great point though that like the newness for away fans is probably
Hmm.
still there. Um, but not necessarily obviously for the folks in the state of Washington anymore. Um, so, like there's a lot of factors and I am getting to a point here. But like so that's gone. Even folks who maybe have liked it already, maybe if they want to come back, they can't afford it. Like
Hmm.
my cousin, I have a cousin who, came from the Philippines, but five years ago during 2020, that was a big culture shock to just come here and then come here during a pandemic. God bless him. Um, but like, I mean, he likes to check out the sports stuff. He does through all of our coverage, and he'd like to do more Kraken stuff, but it's expensive.
Yep.
He's like, we were looking at ticket prices yesterday, and that Vancouver game, like the cheapest to get in is like at least $100.
Hmm.
Like that's not cheap. Let alone if you're hungry, if you want to try to park somewhere, like if you do want to drink, like it's not cheap. The Wild game is much cheaper for some reason. I'm like, aren't the Wild a better team? Anyway,
Yeah.
um, so there's that. There's the fact that they're not winning. It's like being priced out, the newness being gone. Like they're not winning. They're not
Hmm.
fun. They don't have a star. You don't have like I go back to the University of Washington, the men's basketball team hasn't really been good for a while. And even a few years ago, even throughout the years, they've been fun to watch because they will get guys, largely because the state of Washington is so great for basketball talent. They'll get guys who are entertaining, like Markel
Hmm.
Fultz, who got drafted pretty high, and he's had his own struggles. God bless Markel. He was like people would pack the gym at UW. That team was bad. They were near the bottom of the Pac-12, but they would go because Markel would do something fun.
Yep.
Like, they don't have that right now.
And
We
it's not
might
like,
talk as much as we can about Joey and all that,
hmm
but not enough people are aware of that.
it's not like we're a team like, oh, I cannot believe I'm about to say this, but it's not like we're the Devils with like Jack Hughes and
Nah.
uh or the Sharks with Macklin Celebrity and Will Smith. And the only players that are coming to my mind are players that I'm not a fan of. Anyways, it's
Woo.
not like we have, like Seattle has some phenomenal, one of the best players in the league kind of thing, or a brand new rookie that's just killing it this year. They just don't have that.
No, and like Shane Wright, to his credit, has been playing well, and I'm happy where he is in his development and
Hmm.
stuff like that. But like like you said, it's no like over the top, guy in that sort of regard. Like Macklin's who I think of. Like if I was in San Jose and I was just a fan, I would get tickets to games just to go see him and Will Smith,
Hmm.
truthfully, right? So, and the other part of it is that San Jose like hockey fan base has been around a decent amount of time
Yep.
as compared to this, where it's like I'll be one of the first people to say, hey, like Seattle has had hockey. Like there was some stupid article in the Times lately that was like, can Seattle ever be a hockey town? And I was like, well, it kind of already has been.
Yeah.
Like with whether it be the Metropolitans way back in the day, there's been women's teams here, there's been men's teams here, obviously the Thunderbirds and the Silvertips. Like,
Hmm.
shut up. Um, but it's like still even those fans of the Thunderbirds and the Silvertips, they're more for a myriad of reasons, more willing to go to those games, one, because it's cheaper, um, and stay in those markets. Like
Yep.
you haven't captured enough of the fan base here, and you're still working to do so. And
Hmm.
so, like all of that to say, which is a long ramble, and I apologize, like there are a lot of reasons why ownership wants to win now.
Yep.
Like, I mean, we all saw how good things were year two when they
Hmm.
actually went to the playoffs and won consistently. Like, if you're able to build a franchise, like the ones around the different sports, the Packers, the Spurs used to do it all the time. The Phillies are a team that goes to the play. Like all these teams that go to the playoffs
Hmm.
consistently, right? Like they do well financially
Yep.
and on their respective field, right? And so
Yep.
there's a lot of reasons for ownership to want to win now, and like Todd was saying, be a team that doesn't just get there, that goes deep. Um, I don't think they're in a position to tear it all down and rebuild. Because what is the timeline for that look like, right? San Jose's kind of already done that. Like they went to a cup, what, within the last few decades, and they're like I got a little bit scared when I saw them get Celebrini. I was like, all right, like how long is this gonna take this team to contend? But
Hmm.
who knows when they like actually legitimately put it together, right?
Yeah. There
You
was
don't
a
know.
joke on 32 Thoughts today. Yeah, I kind of like doing this on Mondays because then I get to reference that because that
Nah,
usually comes out Monday mornings. I think it was 32 Thoughts though, or no, maybe it was no, it's a Daily Face Off show. Somebody made a joke about how how much longer are we gonna have to wait for this 13-year Sabres rebuild? And like that's a really good point for the people that are d demanding, insisting that Seattle needs to rebuild because sure, that's all fun to say, but then you're going another shit. Even Philadelphia's been in a rebuild for a while, the new era of orange that it still really sucks. But you're just waiting and waiting and waiting for greatness to come, and then that upsets fans even more because they're waiting even longer. So yeah, the whole rebuild now thing has always just kind of it's frustrating to see people talk about.
it's tough because at the end of the day, like with how the expansion draft went and how you weren't able to wheel and deal like Las Vegas did because everyone said,
Hmm.
"Hey, no, I know what you want to do." Like
Yep.
ideally, that would have been okay. We're gonna draft well. We're gonna develop those players, and we're gonna be bad for like again, I remember this because I was there. The
Hmm.
first 4 to 5 years, we're gonna be bad. But when we get to those 4 to 5 years, we'll start to be that contending team and we'll have built it so that it's sustainable to keep drafting well and win and keep having waves of talent come in, right? They've drafted well, yes, but
Hmm.
again, I just like it would be really great. I don't know if someone will ever do it before me, but to look at a deep dive of how that year two skewered so much, not only for the organization, but obviously the fan base as well. Like it was great, yes, and it was great to grab some fans with that then. Like we have
Hmm.
friends who reference year two all the time, right? And I'm like, it's not, it's that is an outlier,
Yep.
not not a consistency. Like it was a blip, unfortunately.
Hmm.
So
Which
it
then I
just
know I see a lot of comparison between Seattle and Vegas too, in that same regard, where Vegas is consistently making playoffs and they're doing better, and then you look at Seattle and it's just not quite the same. So I see a lot of that comparison as well, and that also it doesn't seem realistic to
no.
compare the two.
No, and another thing, and it's great that you bring that up because I feel like I've talked about this part in previous shows as well, is that, you know, with Vegas, like the Kraken have they've made some under the radar sort of trades, right? Like
Hmm.
with Bjorkstrand is going to be a cap dump. Not a cap dump, but they had to sh free up some space, right, with Gaudreau.
Hmm.
Um, with Kako, that was a swap for sort of an under the radar defenseman and a forward that needed a new change of scenery, right?
Hmm.
Like The other guys they've gotten via trade, it's like Victor Rask, Tomasz Tatar, like they're not really big names, right? They
Yeah.
haven't made the big swing in that regard. They haven't pulled a resource, a prospect, and they haven't done that yet. They've
Hmm.
made swings in free agency, yes, and I will always think that the Stevenson and Montour signings were pressured on Ron, to make big deals. Even going back to Grubauer and like Burakovsky, like I understand why they did that, given what he'd come off of and his talent. Like
Hmm.
I understand that. Grubauer, I can understand why you wanted to bring him in coming off the Vezina level play. The term, ooh,
Yeah.
um, that's why again I was concerned with the Decord term this offseason. Seems to be oh my God, the dog downstairs. It seems to be working out. Um, but yeah, like you have to look at this franchise, at least with the free agents and with some of the decisions that they make, under the lens that it comes with them wanting to win, to because it's best for business and because they
Hmm.
do want to grab hold of some of that fan base before the NBA comes here and really kind of takes a lot of attention from a lot of teams. It will take
Yep.
attention from a lot of teams, not just the Kraken either. Whether it's them, like if the Mariners don't do much of anything this year and they continue to be cheap, they continue to lose points with the fans, and they've done that for decades.
Hmm.
The Sounders are great, and I think they're the closest team to a title, but like basketball is just an easier sport for a lot of American fans to grasp, right?
Hmm.
So they'll just take and even for the first few years, they can be terrible. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter. And that'll be another conversation for how they're run for a different show. We eventually do. But yeah,
I was,
that's just where I'm at with them,
yeah, I was gonna say even we talked about the novelty with the Kraken wearing off, and I just when Seattle gets a basketball team back, I don't see that novelty wearing off for some time because of the history
Yeah. No, I
and
mean
how
just
desperately the fans want basketball back here.
just the history with men's basketball here, whether it be the Sonics previously or even the players that have come out of this area.
Hmm.
Like there have been players who come out of this area who talk about that and they
Yep.
never played on the team, right? Kevin Durant played on the Sonics and he advocates for them all the time.
Hmm.
But, guys like Jamal Crawford, Zach LaVine, you know, just to name a few who have, been pros there, DeJounte Murray, who went to UW. Like, there are guys who reference it all the time.
Hmm.
Isaiah Thomas. So it's like, it's there. And like, as someone who did previously work with the Kraken at their retail, like, the Kraken for NHL marks, I don't know how it stuck up to other sports, but like the general merchandise and obviously the jerseys, they broke records the hell out of the water when they started. Like they did such a good job with the branding, and it was new here.
Hmm.
Like I would hear when I was working there, fans would come from all over. They'd be like, "Oh, we're Fly." I'm not saying this just to say that. Like I heard Flyers fans that we came to Seattle because we wanted to check it out and we
Hmm.
bought merch. Like Ducks fans, Buffalo fans, like people loved it and they just might have a jersey. So
Just because.
yeah. And that will happen here and
Hmm.
probably a lot more for the Sonics. Like again, as much as people might not like it, and there are bad things about, the business and the greed aspect of these sports teams, you have to admit it at some
Yeah.
point. If you're gonna get into that much of a fandom, you have to at least be aware of it.
Hmm.
It's not fun to look at per se. Like in so many sports, it's terrible. Unlike hockey, hockey doesn't do that. To see the owner get the trophy first, right?
Hmm.
Like, I understand how bad all that is, but you have to be aware of that with some of the decisions that are made, and stuff like that. It's undeniable with the Mariners,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yep.
so all that to say,
Topic.
looking at their, it's just something that can't be denied, though.
Yeah.
Like it came into my head and when I was listening to all those radio shows on President's Day to hear what these because we don't get access to Todd like that. Like I'll see him
Hmm.
around and he'll say, "Hey Charles, how are you doing?" And he talks like
Yeah.
that. I'm not making fun of him. That's how he speaks. I'm not being mean to Todd. Like he sounds like that. Charles, how you
Hmm.
doing? You got to go down to Coachella Valley. You have to go see the Firebirds. I'm like, yes, Todd. When I can get down to Coachella Valley, I will. Um, I can only imagine what it was like being on the phone because there was the game last year where they played the Rangers and the lights went out and he was on the catwalk. I can only be imagine being on the phone. "Oh, what's happening with the lights? Like you guys have got to come. I'm up here right now. What do you need me to do?" Like I can only imagine being on the other end of that call. Um, oh, please, Todd, don't do anything to me. I'm sorry. Um, but like hearing him, it just in like comments, I thought I didn't have a second thought about what he said because it makes sense. They want to win
Hmm.
now. They're clearly not going to try to rebuild. You don't, you know, if they were going to do that, I feel like they've have started selling already. They wouldn't have
Yep.
waited until what, 2 weeks before. They would have. I was surprised that nothing happened over Four Nations generally.
Me
Like I guess
too. So
everybody
bummed.
was. I know you were trying to get it to happen. Um,
Manifesting.
but so generally nothing happened. It was
No.
weird. Like everything I had heard leading into it is that there would be at least discussions, and I feel like we didn't hear anything. I guess
Mhm.
everybody was just so fully tuned into it that they didn't care to call anybody else.
There was a couple like contract extensions,
Yes.
re-signings, but
Yeah. Like Vancouver
man,
got
give me a
someone
good
busy.
trade.
No, no one did anything fun. Um, so yeah, I mean, I guess we'll just I'll briefly look at it again. We've done this already, but like, and I'm talking purely, I understand that a lot of these players will have their respective value, excuse me, as leadership players, guys who show good leadership, sorry. Ghost, if you'd like to sponsor us, please. I
Please.
love grape flavored things and the Welch is great. Not only that, I was at Costco yesterday and they've got this great flavor pack,
Mm,
right? With like, is that strawberry? No, cherry limeade, grape, and pink lemonade. I love those two already. Ghost, please sponsor us, please. If Jay doesn't want it, I'll take your flavors. Thank you.
okay.
Um, oh, Jesus. This okay. Sorry, back on track. These players, like, I understand that they've got their leadership value. Yes, they would be tough to lose. Yes. And their production would be tough to lose. Yes. But those three aspects, whether it's all together or on their own or, two or three here and there, makes them ample trade targets and can help
Mhm.
you in the future, whether that is a younger player, a player swap, or picks, right? Like Jaden Schwartz, 32 years old. I understand he would break up that line.
Mhm.
He's got value right now. This is one
Yep.
of his better seasons in the last few years. Let me actually look that up while I yap. But like he's got undeniable value. He's a guy that's won a cup, right? He wears an A. Um, you know, I don't think he's that cheap though. No, 5.5 million a year for the next 2 years. He's got a 16 team no trade list. So I mean it's possible. Like if I think he would be, it wouldn't be outlandish to think that he could go somewhere else. Jesus Christ has been in the league for 14 years. Wow. God. Let me see where he's at points wise. Oh wow. Yeah, he's already topped his production from last year. Points wise. Yep. Five more goals. He will probably break his production. This is probably going to be his best year production wise as a Kraken. He's 4 points away from his highest point total, which was year two. Surprising, right?
Mhm.
I don't think he'll have a career year like all time when he hit 63 points with the Blues in 2014-15. I just don't think that's gonna happen.
No.
Hey, if he gets what would he need? He's at 36 right now. Yeah, no, that's not happening. That's not happening. But that's a guy, obviously, right? Um, there was a report from I think it was Elliot, Mr. Friedman, who said that Burakovsky was in talks. I'm like, again, if someone is calling you or mentions his name, you say, "Oh yeah," and then you get that done like
Yeah.
now.
There's been
Um,
a handful of guys that I know Burakovsky was one of them. Mm, Yanni was one of the other ones that I've just seen nonstop. He's linked to this team. He's linked to that team. He's linked to this team. And it's come from all kinds of different, like actual, verifiable sources. And
Yeah.
that's one that obviously everyone is kind of debating with the injury.
Yeah. I
But
and I'll get to him in a second, but like
yeah. Sorry, you said Elliot, and then that made me think of that.
Elliot, yeah. Um, I don't know. I think that's my thing on Berkey. Someone wants him, give him up. I'm
Hmm.
sorry. You just kind of like that contract, especially if you're gonna again retool and you do want to compete next year and you do want to be a team that wins now, you have to get that 5.5 million off the books.
Yep,
Like it's not doing you
absolutely.
anything, and it would open up a way to get in someone else new and or more productive. Oliver Bjorkstrand, like not old, he's just 29, and he's been. Let me look at him too. He's been pretty productive, but because of his age, because of his production, and because of what people have seen. I mean, he's like I was watching something the other day that had Game 7 against Colorado show up. He scored two of the goals in that game, and he hit the post like three times. Like,
Hmm.
I mean, the guy is there when they need him. Like, he's a winner, even though he hasn't won a ton in his career, having been with, Columbus. And that's not a diss towards Columbus, it's just
Hmm.
legitimate. Um, where is he at? 35 points. No. Yeah, he's not going to beat what he did last year with his All-Star season. But I mean, still not a bad year. God damn, yeah. I mean, this is a guy that hasn't gone below 35 points since his second year in the league. Yeah, Jesus Christ. I mean, that's a guy that just does it. I mean, the last few years out like yeah, his last 3 years before this, he's played in 80 plus games each game. Like he's dependable. He can shoot the puck and he
Hmm.
produces. Like you see the value. Again, I
Yep.
understand it would hurt, but like, you know. And then Yanni Gord. Yeah. Yanni Gord, outside of the injury issue, like it makes sense. I love Yanni Gord as
Me
much as the
too.
next guy, right?
Yep.
But it makes sense. He's 33. He could help a team that's contending. That's the thing is, I don't know if anyone knows what he wants to do. Even in the reports, right? Like I don't think it's been said he wants to win another cup. That like I haven't seen that.
It's just been kind of like,
Him
I don't know,
tied
I've
to
seen
people,
like,
right?
yeah, and I've seen a couple like, if he does go somewhere, he wants to go to a contending team, but like, does he, or is that just what people are assuming?
Yeah, and that's the thing too is like, and this would be more of like asking straight up, getting to the point. We haven't been able to talk to him because he's been
Hmm.
hurt. We're
Yeah.
not allowed to talk to people that are hurt, not on the record at least. So like, I say that because like Ebbs almost ran me over in the locker room like one of the last times before, and I was like, oh, I probably shouldn't be in your way. Um, so it's tough. Like, I mean, the man has won two cups. He's a leader here. He
Hmm.
obviously loves it here. Like, obviously his family is here now.
Yep.
And he's been so huge to, excuse me, so many of the younger players here, and just some of that spirit that so much of this team could use.
Hmm.
Excuse me, there's so many times that Sylvia has said it on the show, uh, or excuse me, God, the ghost is making me burp. Ghost, please sponsor. Um, during games that she says that this game could use a Yanni Gord for
Yeah.
Seattle, and I
I
don't know if
agree
people are
with
like
that
that,
most of the time as well.
you know. So I wouldn't touch Jared McCann. I don't like that one bit. Don't like it. No. That's that's where I'm at. Like, and here's my Jared McCann shtick. I don't have a soapbox, do I? No, I don't. You don't touch that man. He was one of your first extensions in franchise history. Like he's making $5 million a year, which is fine. He's been one of your leading goal scorers. He's found his career here. Like we don't need to go down the list of the places that essentially wronged him, let alone the team that's up north that did that. And
Hmm.
the Vancouver fans that want him back, I'm not gonna do that. I was gonna show a finger to
Don't
the
do that.
camera. I'm gonna rein it in a little bit, but ugh, like a solid year in 2018-19 when he was with Florida and Pittsburgh. But you see that you're looking at his year in hockey reference, right? Like a couple 235 point seasons in 18-19 and 19-20. Solid year with Pittsburgh in 2021. And then you see it jump in points. 50-point season, 70-point season, 62-point season. 43 right now, which is on the lower side of things, but he will probably pass 50 again.
Hmm.
So, like Bjorkstrand, but better, he produces. His shot talent remains unreal. He's been a bit snake bitten, but I'm not buying that for how he is. Like
Yeah.
Milo mentioned for the second time in this episode, our buddy Milo he said that it was like Donskoy type snake bitten. That was
Mhm.
bad. And then Donskoy stopped playing hockey after that. So
Yeah.
let's not do that again.
Yeah.
Um, oh, look at that. Milo just sent a text. That's crazy. Um, where was I in my rant? Yeah, he's 28 years old. Like the guy has constantly talked about wanting to win a cup and to do so here. He talks about Seattle all the time. He talked about it in his extension video. That extension that was signed the same day the Seahawks traded Russell Wilson. I'll never forget that. We lost a city icon. We gained a city icon in the
Yep.
city. Um, and Jade can attest to this because she has been there with me when it happens. Like after just about every con I saw what you just said. After every loss that is a close loss, I'm gonna do it for dramatic effect. Jared McCann will be in his locker and he'll sit in his locker like this. And he's just sitting there looking at the ground, or he's sitting there like you can tell he's thinking about what the hell just happened and how they
Hmm.
lost and how they can improve from it. Like obviously different papal people take losses differently and they respond differently, right? But
Hmm.
the guy shows that he fucking cares and he cares about this city. Like there are people who care about winning, yes, but they aren't maybe as loyal to the city. Jared McCann cares about this city and he's loyal to it and he wants to win here. I'm not touching that.
Yeah.
Like, and it's not just one or the other. If it was God bless him, it's not a diss. If it was Colin Blackwell level production and he had the caring about winning here, then maybe I'm like,
Hmm.
sir, but we need to get better. Jared McCann has well, he might not be the star player that you need. Like championship teams have a Jared McCann, in my
Hmm.
opinion,
He's a
right?
he's an important piece of the puzzle of the cup someday.
Yeah, kind of how Mitch Haniger with the Mariners. Granted, he did he leave and come back? No, he didn't. Well, not before they went to the playoffs, but Mitch Haniger was the best player, best younger player on the Mariners for a while, dealt with some injuries, and he saw it through to them to get to the playoffs. Like Jared
Hmm.
McCann will be part of that resurgence. And because the cap will go up, his 5 million will look better and better because
Hmm.
of the production that he's giving you. And he's signed through what, 26, 27. So don't fucking touch Jared McCann. I
Yeah.
swear to God. Like,
There's so many other players that can be
yes.
touched before him. Please.
Yeah. I like, unless you are getting a superstar,
Hmm.
and even then it'll be tough. Then I'd be like, are you sure you couldn't have found something else to give him? Like, you
Yeah.
couldn't, unless you're getting a bona fide star, I'm not touching him.
Hmm.
Nope. Um, you're not trading your captain, so I'm gonna move by that. He also has a no trade clause. Yep. So, Brandon Tanev, get out. Shut up. Get out. That's all I gotta say. It's that
Yeah.
scene from one of the original Spider-Men. Shut up. Get out. I'm done.
Hmm.
I'm done. Like,
Tired of that experiment.
I'm tired of the experiment. I'm tired, as much as it's kind of mean to say, and I understand the fan base, it was fun from day one. Like the newness, to me, the newness with Brandon Tanev is worn off. Um, like we talked about with this team, right? Like
Hmm.
the headshot was fun, the energy was great. Like he was a solid point producer in year one before he got hurt
Yep.
in Nashville. He had a good start to this season. Don't get me wrong.
Hmm.
He um he kills penalties well. He's one of your most valuable penalty killers, but you know what you're gonna get with Brandon Tanev, and he's 33. He's a free agent at the end of the year. Get some value for him now.
Yep. And
Like,
he's one that there are a handful of players that we talk about potentially moving, the organization potentially moving, and a lot of them just feel so similar to like just needing a change of scenery. They just need something different. They need something new, and then they might do better. And he could be one of them because, like you said, he is great at penalty killing, and he definitely has his strengths. It's just not working here anymore, in my opinion.
yeah, I mean, like there are teams that will take a penalty killer, um, that will take a guy with his experience because he's been around a decent amount, right?
Hmm.
Um, there's no situation. I don't think he signs an extension. I don't think he's a guy that wants to be here. We talk about Jared McCann wanting to be here. I don't think he's a guy that wants to be here
Yeah.
past his contract. Like unless they vastly overpay him, which would be, organization not I don't want to use the word I'm thinking, but very detrimental to the organization.
Yeah.
It just shouldn't happen.
Absolutely.
Um, moving past him, I don't I'm if someone gives you decent value for Ellie Tolvanen, I'd understand it. But he's
Hmm.
25. He's one of your most physical forwards. He like outside of Tanev, whenever I would look at the hits leaders for the Kraken, he would be up there. And he still has great shot power. We've seen it less this year just because it feels like like in Nashville, he was like the one trick pony. They talked about his shot all the time. I remember doing
Hmm.
my deep dive into him, the deep dive that he read because there was a photo in it that's only in that, and it's his profile picture now. You can go to
Hmm.
Ellie Tovanen's accounts. Um, and Nashville vastly mistreated him. Um, he seems to like it here, and obviously, like the guy that's next on this chart on Puckpedia, he's been great for Capo Caco. He's only a year older than him. I did not know that.
I
Um,
didn't realize that Tolvanen was 25.
yeah, see,
Old.
like, um, he's 25. Like, he's only on a decent contract. And he's through next year. I'm not. His name hasn't come up either, so I'm not touching
Yeah.
him. Again, it's like there are a lot of guys who are like this in this situation, but if they bring you enough value or it's part of bringing you a star, I understand that. If someone wants like a first rounder and Ellie Tolvanen for a bona fide star, let's go. Like, come
Hmm.
on. Kako, non-starter. Don't talk. Nope. The only thing about him should be an extension. Same with
Yep.
Shane. Carts, I'm kind of eh. I'm like I imagine. Um, I don't think anyone's gonna call it trade for him. Um,
I
but
could see
like
him being tossed in as a,
as a filler,
yeah, just
sure,
as a piece to a trade, like
that
a
would make sense.
used as a pawn in a trade almost.
Yeah, that would make sense. And like I think his future here is filling in Brendan Tanev's role going
Hmm.
forward. Like again, I
Yeah.
remember being at training camp and I think I did ask Dan about Carts. I almost called him Cart. Or
Pathfinder.
yeah, Pathfinder. As Monty will call him. Fucking weirdo. Um, and obviously Dan is someone who worked with Ty in Coachella Valley. I expected to hear some good things from him. He talked about his shot talent. I just had like I talked to Jade about this on this show. I have not seen it enough to care
Hmm.
about it. So Mitchell Stevens, no one's calling about Mitchell Stevens. Um, I wouldn't move Vince Dunn or Brandon Montour personally. They go in the category if you're getting a bona fide star. Vince Dunn and Brandon Montour also have no trade clauses this year. Vince a modified next year and Montour a full no trade the next 3 years. So
Good.
non-starter. Jamie Alexiak, I'm fine with it personally. I
Hmm.
really am. You'd have to call up a D-man and have them spend the rest of the year here, whether that's Kale or Otavainen or Olofsson. fine. It's fine with
Yeah.
me. 32 years old, 4.6 million, modified no trade. Like his contract's up at the end of next year, but I think there's some value there for a guy who has been to a cup, puck moving defenseman,
Hmm.
decent amount of experience, right? Good size. He doesn't use it enough, but
I was going
I
to
think the
say he
value would
is
be there.
large, which some teams are looking for
Yeah.
a
So
big defenseman, from what I've, heard people saying.
like the value could be there. Adam Larson, he for one, he's got a no trade clause the next 3 years, so I doubt it. But if he's happy moving, which don't think he would,
Hmm.
and someone gives you good enough, like if we're removing the other circumstances like that, and if someone called you to give you good value, I'd listen. I'd
Yeah.
hear what there is. Riker Evans, nope, you can't have him. Fuck you. Josh Mahura, I've seen people mention Mahura as a trade candidate. Who? What?
I,
Why? Like, don't get me wrong. We have sung Josh Mahura's praises on this show. He is
mhm.
only 26 and he's on a league minimum deal. Who is calling for him? Like,
Yeah.
I'm just confused more than
He's
anything
kind of
else.
another one that I could see them tossing in as like a
Mm,
piece
yeah,
to a trade, but also I don't know that I would he's not having a standout year or anything, but given the fact he's on a league minimum deal, that's not a player that I personally would really, I don't know. Can't say I would really want to trade him.
no. Like, even with his age, I could see him getting another like 1 year next year, or maybe a
Hmm.
tour, just because like I imagine that the like saying Alexiak gone, right? And I don't really think they keep this decor totally intact.
Hmm.
Um, again, Alexiak just seems like the easiest one to move in my opinion. Um, Mahura wouldn't be a bad option. So, and then I'm not even touching the crease. Like you're not touching Joey Decord. Right now you're not touching Nick A. Coco, and nobody trade will trade for Phillips' contract. So
Yeah.
you can piss off with that. All right. Oh God. Um. Oh, okay. All right. That was just the first part of the show, Jade.
Oh my God.
Um. Okay, we'll get into. We talked about him, but not really in depth. Jordan Eberle's back. I don't think he had the craziest past few games, and that was the thing too that was talked about on the broadcast and prior to the first game that he played was that they were going to try to be kind of careful with him getting back. It was really interesting to me, um, because I was wondering if maybe we'd see him like at home. I didn't think they'd
Hmm.
throw him into the lineup immediately. But obviously they liked enough of what they heard from when he was with Coachella Valley and practicing there that they felt comfortable with him going into the lineup. And they obviously had, I think, 3 days of practice before they got into the Florida game. So they must have seen him and said, okay, like, here you go. They've stuck
Hmm.
him on the fourth line the last 2 games, which is so fascinating to see one your captain on the fourth line.
Yeah.
Some teams do have their captain on the fourth line, like
Yep.
normally, and that's so funny to me. Um, anyway, and like that's not his game really anyway. But I understand it in the minutes side of things. So this happened, was able to happen first because on the 21st, they placed Johnny Gord on LTIR retroactive to January 4th. So for anybody that might be like, what happened to Yanni? As we had
Hmm.
we had a friend person, whatever it may be. We had a person who'd be like, was like, what happened to Yanni Gord? I'm like, nothing. This does
Hmm.
nothing to his recovery timeline. As our friend Curtis at Deep Sea Hockey has said at the time, it does nothing to affect his timeline to return. He'd already missed what he would need to miss for LTIR, the 24-day minimum. He's been limited in practice. He has been at practice in a red non-contact jersey, so he is still practicing. But putting him on LTIR opens up the necessary cap space for them to bring back Jordan Eberle,
Hmm.
and keeping the roster how it is right now. So it just makes sense. Um, There, like, I saw people freak out about that, and I was like, why? Like, if it wasn't retroactive, sure, but it was
Yeah.
retroactive, so it doesn't mean anything. Um, like, there is a possibility that he does play before the deadline,
Hmm.
so I'll leave that alone. They activated Ebbs the next day, so that he could play against Florida. Yeah, I don't think he had a point in either of those games. Um, No. Yeah. No, that's right. Because Shane had two, Maddie had the one. Um, yeah, no points. -2 plus minus against Tampa Bay. Oh, two shots against Florida. 14 minutes of ice time against Florida. Almost 12 in the second one. Yeah, I guess Jade, and I've been talking, it feels like for like half an hour. Um,
It's been an hour.
oh my God.
Yeah.
Um, How do you like, are you surprised that he's back so soon? Because there were some people who didn't think maybe he'd be back. Like, we had heard from Ron and from Dan that it'd be after Four Nations, right? Which,
Hmm.
I mean, it was true. I didn't think it'd be that fast, but there were folks who were like, he's not coming back at all this year. I'm like, that's wrong. That's
Yeah.
incorrect.
Um,
Um, and
there
just,
was
yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts on it?
I was gonna say there was a bit where I was a little bit nervous that it was gonna be a longer timeline for him coming back. But yeah, I didn't expect them to toss him back in on the road. I also kind of assumed like the first home game or something
Yeah.
when he would be
That
back, but
And it was interesting too.
good for
Oh,
him.
in the recovery was talking about how, this is such a, not only in hockey, but a rare injury in sports with his pelvis just being exploded.
Hmm.
Um, and that in the recovery story, I think Alison Lukan did that. Um, that Ebbs consulted a rugby player, one or two rugby players in New Zealand, because they dealt with this, and I was just like, oh yeah, rugby, and I thought about the Seawolves. Um, but yeah, I mean it's pretty remarkable um to think about that. Like, again, I didn't think he'd be up for the season. Like, I
Yeah,
thought if his recovery had setbacks and it held him out till like March, then I was like, just shut the guy down. Like, he's
that was
old.
my thoughts as well.
But I was like, if everything goes well, there's no reason not to let him play still. Like, he's your
Hmm.
captain. It's nice to have that on the ice, not only for the skill, but the leadership side of things. Like, just to be like, okay, he's around. Like, and I
Yeah.
know that's a boost to the guys, like Jared McCann,
Hmm.
um, who visited him when he was bedridden. Yeah. So
Yep.
yeah, I don't know. I'm not surprised. It's nice to see though. And I think the biggest thing for me with Ebbs is, let me pull up our lineup graphic, is wondering how the lineup changes, excuse me, when they have him um
Sorry.
ready
An ad
for,
on my phone. I
oh,
don't know if
no,
you heard that.
I had another burp from the Ghost
Oh,
Please sponsor. Um See how the lines change um uh when he is ready for more than fourth line minutes,
yep.
because Karts has been scratched the last few games, and like, I don't imagine you mess with the Schwartz Beniers Kako line, and I don't really have much affinity for your middle six lines either. So like, maybe you put him with McCann and Wright, and make that your second line.
Hmm.
Because he's played with McCann already. Like, certainly doesn't hurt. And I think they've. Ooh, maybe I can look this up on Money Puck. I can look at the lines. Yay! Uh, I'm so fucking stupid. Oh, the fact that people let me do what I get to do, and I'm so smarter than these people, is amazing. Let's go. McCann, right? Oh God. Yeah. Well, and I think my biggest thing, Jade, with this is like, someone has to move to the fourth line or get scratched.
Hmm.
And I think finally we get this. Andre Burakovsky scratch because
Hmm.
he can't really play a fourth line game. So you see what I'm saying here? I don't know. What do you think
Yeah,
about? I'm gonna look at the lines here, but yes, okay. McCann, right, Eberle. Sorry, I found it. They've only played 44 minutes this year. Where'd he go?
that kind of
Uh,
tracks given the timing of the injury, though, too.
6 games, 43.2% goals percentage, 2.5 expected goals for. Yeah, so small sample size, but not a bad sample size. I don't
Hmm.
know. What do you think happens like because that's what makes sense to me is you put him on the line with McCann and Wright, you bump them up to a second line, Tolvanen, Stevenson, Bjorkstrand. That's an expensive 3C.
Hmm.
Um, Fit there as your third line, and then you go back to the Tanev, Stevens, Cartier. This is like if you're playing the St. Louis game. This is how I would do it.
Hmm.
Um, because like Burakovsky can't play that fourth line. That's not his game.
Yeah.
Um, Cartier fits in better there. So I don't know. What would you do?
Probably exactly what you said you would do, honestly. I can't see myself really switching that up that much. And I would run that until the trade deadline. And then there's a, there's a good chance that one of the forwards gets traded and then you're having to remix the lines anyway. So I would probably run it for a few games, kind of see where the um chemistry is going to land again,
Yeah, I
especially given that um Eberle hasn't played with Kako at all. And obviously you're not breaking up that top line, but that all the I feel like all of the line chemistry affects each other, if that makes sense.
yeah. Well, and what will always be fascinating to me was Ron. I think it was it was Ron on the Kraken Hockey Network after Wiki was in Buffalo for that game. And there were the Elliott reports about how he didn't want to hire Dan and he wanted Todd McClellan. And he did the Kraken Hockey Network thing. Um,
Hmm.
but I think it was on that one he mentioned the team's mental fragility, and I was like, wow, so you're basically calling your team soft,
Yeah.
which isn't great, but I bring it up to mention that like if the chemistry works for them, if it works for them and they play better when they've got that consistency with each other, I
Hmm.
wouldn't make things worse by messing with it too much. So
Yeah.
like that's the easiest thing for me to go 1951-7, bump them up to the second line, bump
Hmm.
29 and 22 down to the third line. Considering that 20 and 22 have already largely played on a third line when they had Yanni
Yep.
in the middle. Um, and then Tanev, Stevens, Cartier. Say you move a Tanev. Um, oh God. I don't know, because then are you just scratching Berkey the rest of the year, or I don't know. Ugh. Maybe I'll mess around
That's
with
what I'm saying. I think a
Husky.
trade might have to, like, you might have to really consider at that point who
Oh God.
is going to be the future of the team.
Yeah, like oh God, it's really raining. Jesus, the weather's not great here in the area currently,
No.
so I'm glad that I can just sit inside the next few days. Um, yeah, it's fun, but I think that's the easiest thing, and you can worry about other things later on, um, with uh what to do with Burakovsky and that. Because yeah,
Yeah.
there will be call-ups like we talked, I think it was in the last episode that we did, like which players to call up.
Hmm.
Those forwards, because your top prospects or forwards need somewhere to go.
Yeah.
So,
You can't just keep them in
um,
Coachella forever,
no. Okay.
fortunately.
Eberle, God. Neke Coco. All right. This one also caused some questions and some what's happening. And our dearest beloved Milo, I am called the Magic Man because I soothe um anxiety to an extent, apparently. So that's three Milo mentions or four? I think we're at
I think
four.
we're at three.
Okay. But yes, Monday today, on what should largely be a quiet day on the schedule I got, they were supposed to practice in St. Louis today. But that would have been set for 10 our time, and the call-up announcement came up 19 minutes after 10. So I don't think he practiced with them today. I could be wrong. They could have announced it later. That is something that they do in sports. Um, but also I feel like we would have seen it. Like they would have hyped it
Yeah.
up, you know? So Nikkei Coco was recalled from the Firebirds. Additionally, Alish Steska and Kale Fleury were reassigned to Coachella Valley. Now, this like knee-jerk reaction some people had was that he's gonna play, or like some I'll be nice. Some people thought it meant that Philip Grubauer had moved down to fourth on the organizational depth chart.
Hmm.
I'm trying really hard, Jade.
I know. Me too.
Um, that's not the case,
Yeah.
no matter what you might think, because this does a few things, at least making sense. The Kraken could surprise all of us and do the most surprising thing, and this could be their white flag. I don't think it
Hmm.
is, because you have to factor this in, okay? The Kraken play just one game over the next 5 days. They play tomorrow,
Hmm.
Tuesday, the 25th, against the Blues, and then they'll come home and they don't play again until the first against Vancouver,
Yep.
right? So there's a decent amount of time there, um, where you don't have to worry about it. It's not like this back to back where you had to play Stezka. I almost said Coco. Wrong.
Hmm.
Like, so I think I broke this down as well to some of our friends. He's just gonna back up. He's gonna
Hmm.
see the NHL life. It was kind of like when Shane Wright first got called up and he scored against Montreal. Oh, that was glorious. Um, he got to see some NHL life. He
Hmm.
did sit in the press box a little bit. He got to be around. He did the whole media thing. Da 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 da. Then he went back. They said, "Hey, you got an experience. We want you to come back. We want you to like want to be back.
Yep.
Here's how it went. Learn from these guys. Come back ready." And he
Hmm.
has, right? So like it's a bit early, but obviously the organization feels strongly about him. The fan base has liked what he's done in Coachella Valley. He's got 15 wins. Now there's a
Hmm.
rookie. He's 20 years old, Jade. I'm not making you feel old on purpose,
Yeah.
but he makes me feel old too. He's only 20. Um, so, you know, and then also Coachella Valley between now and one, two, sorry, I'm doing this. They played two games before the first, which was
Hmm.
Vancouver, right? I don't imagine because Philip Grubauer did play against the San Jose Barracuda in their last game, I do believe. Um, AHL website is loading slowly. Yeah, I'm 99% sure he did. So
Hmm.
he's not going to play the next two games. I think that's unlikely.
Hmm.
So he factors in because with only the one game in the next 5 days, obviously, you know, there's not anywhere Steska's going to go,
Yeah.
right? And the big thing, as again, we're going back to Curtis, our friend Deep Sea Hockey, it resets his waiver clock
Hmm.
because he'd been here, what, 14 days since the last time he was placed on waivers. And I think it's 30 days is the limit or something like that. Um,
I can't. That sounds kind of right.
Let me go back to. I know RJ. Yeah, at 30 days he requires waivers. Yes.
Okay.
So this cuts the clock.
Hmm.
And, we played in that game. You'll probably have him back before Vancouver, I imagine.
Yeah.
Get him a game in Coachella Valley, whether that is Henderson or San Diego.
Hmm.
San Diego? Yeah, it is San Diego.
Again?
Yeah. It was
Oh.
Grubauer. Okay. So yeah, you're not having him play 3 games in a row.
Hmm.
I just don't think he can handle that at this stage of his career.
Yeah.
Or I don't know if he'd want it. Um, yeah, San Diego. Yep. So you play Henderson and San Diego. I imagine Cesca plays one of those. One of them's on
Hmm.
Wednesday, one of them's on Friday. It would make sense for him to play one of those games, have him come back after Friday. I imagine maybe before. Um, so there's that. They're going to reward him a little bit because he gets the NHL level pay.
Hmm.
And in the video that the Firebirds posted of the call up, um, they said you're going to back up in St. Louis.
Yep.
Like, I don't know, all of the sense in this big egg brain, Jade, tells me this is just a oneer. Just like
Hmm.
with Victor Ostman. Ostman had carried the load in Kansas City. They called
Yep.
him up to just be the placeholder over the time of the Four Nations break.
Hmm.
This is that to me on a smaller level because it's less time. I don't know. What
Hmm.
did you think about it?
I agree with all of that again. At first I was a little bit like, "Duh, I don't know how I feel about that." But then when they confirmed, he's just backing up, I was like, oh, okay, cool. We got to stop killing the baby goalies.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is like you I don't think he maybe deeper into the season, maybe if we get deeper into the season and it's against like a San Jose,
Hmm.
maybe, maybe.
Yeah, just
Um,
to get the like actual in-game NHL experience, not just
yeah,
the sitting on the bench NHL
not
experience.
right now,
Yeah.
right? Like, excuse me, and also considering the fact that Coachella Valley, they haven't been as good as they have been in previous years when they, had these like basically guys who are good enough for the NHL but aren't quite there.
Hmm.
Aren't good enough to stay around, with Podorowski and Lind and
Yep.
all these guys, right? Cameron Hughes. Um, they're still sixth in the AHL. They're 6 points out of first place in the entire league behind the Rochester Americans. There are a few other teams in front of them, but they're still a good team. They're going to make a playoff run. He will be big for them in that playoff run.
Hmm.
Like, let the cake bake fully. I'm not. They're not gonna do a lot with him.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
fully
think they
agree.
will. And even people I've talked to in the hockey world don't think he'll really be here on a full-time basis until
Hmm.
after next season.
Which makes sense because goalies take so much longer to develop, just in general, because there's only so many goalies. They can't all be ready at the same time.
That's the same thing too. And like I talked about Ostman, and he's been solid at Kansas City, but he's in the ECHL. Like that's even
Hmm.
a longer cake to bake.
Yep.
So like Coco's the next guy. Like
Hmm.
let's you want to make sure he doesn't come up here and get shelled and then he's just ruined.
Yeah.
Like I'm like I want to trust the process here how you can. They will
Hmm.
probably like Milo, cover your ears. I'm looking at you. Cover your ears. They're gonna have to buy out Grubauer this offseason
Hmm.
and bring in some like Kevin Lankinen, David Rittich type backup guy, a floater, right?
Hmm.
Because I don't think it's Stezka full time. Like, I don't think so. I
I
could
don't
be
think.
surprised. He played
Yeah.
well in Tampa Bay. I'll give him his credit, but I don't think they're gonna have him up here. Because then who's the other guy in Coachella Valley with Coco?
Hmm.
Um, I don't like maybe. Yeah, I don't know. So yeah, I don't know. The only fun other thing if he gets in a game, God forbid. Like I think the only situation he gets in the game on Tuesday is if they win by a good amount and they say, "All right, buddy, you've got the final 5 minutes. Close
Hmm.
us out." Like, if he does enter a game, he would be the youngest goalie to play the NHL level in over 2 years by at Kraken Stats on Twitter. They post some good stuff as well. Um, I don't see a scenario outside of a cleanup job where he plays,
Yeah.
and I don't think he stays on the roster past Friday. I'm gonna say Friday at the most. So that's just my like it just doesn't make sense,
Hmm.
right? Like at least not right now. Later in the
The
season when you're far out of it and you wave the white flag, sure. Could this
Yeah.
be their white flag? We don't know because we haven't heard like there's been no availability with Ron or Dan. Like maybe tomorrow morning skate they'll talk about it and we'll get
Hmm.
that audio. But yeah.
There's also
Um
the goaltending situation for not even just the Kraken. So many teams this year is uh so many things.
it's been a year.
Um, yeah, but especially with the specifically with the Kraken and the Grubauer situation, I don't think many people fully expected the extent of what's been going on to happen.
Mm, yeah.
Like, yeah,
So
yeah. So I feel like everything is just kind of throwing a wrench in the, you know, the plans, I guess,
yeah.
the plans for this year.
Yeah, it has just like how this season generally has not been a kind. kind
Not
year
a
to
kind season for
anybody.
anybody.
Um,
Okay.
it hasn't been for them either.
Yeah.
So, um, all right. You got anything that I didn't touch on before we get to the week ahead?
Not that I can think of, no.
All I'm doing now is playing with Puckpedia and making my lines like I just said they would be. Sorry, Andre, to the press box you go. Oh, poor Yanni in the LTIR box. All right. So yes. Oh, and let me actually pull up the team schedule. Um, so yes, tomorrow we're gonna get this out. It's gonna be at night when this comes out. Who cares?
Hmm.
Listen. It's raining outside anyway. Perfect rainy day. Ooh,
Yep.
listen to the two nerds on the podcast. Yeah, they play the Blues at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific time tomorrow. It's on the Kraken Hockey Network, which is basically just Amazon Prime Video and Kong.
Hmm.
Um, you could sail the seas. I'm not one to judge. Um, wink. Then after that, Wednesday is a day off, and then they have 2 days of practice. Thursday at 10 a.m. I don't know if those are open to the public. Let me look. Like Jade and I can go. I don't know if y'all can go though. That sounds mean. Let me see. Oh yeah, they're both open to the public. Nice. Oh, so the next 3 days, the 27th, the 28th, and then the morning skate of the first are all open to the public. Nice.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, 27th, 10 a.m., 28th, 10 a.m. They don't list the March 1st one, but it's expected at 10 a.m. It'll probably be an optional, just for
Hmm.
anybody. If you're planning, like Jade knows, like how they've done it this year with Dan is they'll do like real practices the days before a game, and then the day of the game, it's an optional kind of get what you need type day.
Hmm.
Um, so that's the week ahead. Sunday is a team day off at this point. In that game on Saturday against Vancouver, 7 p.m. on KHN, Kraken Hockey Network in Kong as well. Let me see if there's any group or promotional stuff. Giveaways, Kraken hand flag. Ooh. On Saturday against Vancouver. That's every fan in attendance. It's those welcome to the deep flags. That's nice. Colors are nice on that. No group nights. The next group night is Scout Night. Woo! On March 12th. I was never a scout. Irish Heritage Night. Hmm. Interesting. Where's Filipino Heritage Night? God damn it. Anyway, long live my king, Jason Robertson.
Oh my God.
Seattle trade for Jason Robertson, and I'll forever be indebted to the organization. I'll be mid-sized buoy. I've got kind of a stomach, but I can work it off, I promise. Yeah, that's the upcoming week for you. The main things that happened with the Kraken were the two games and then the Eberle and Coco moves. Um, I understand the want for the knee-jerk reaction with those, right? But it's usually
Mhm.
not, mm, you know, more than just kind of basic stuff. Sometimes they surprise us, like with the
Mhm.
Grubauer move finally. Um, but usually, I mean, you can always come to us too, whether it's online or whatever, and usually like we can see things, whether it's the media site or not. So anyway, good to be back. Good to have Jade back. I know it was nice for both of us to kind of take some time off. It was a little weird to
Yeah.
not be doing anything, but
It was very convenient for me since my body's been trying to kill me, but
yeah, Jade,
that's
like, I
fine.
don't know, just like, oh, this is gonna be a mean comparison. I'm so sorry. Just like Matthew Kachuk's body like implodes,
Hmm.
um, like yours kind of seemed to do that.
My
So
immune system imploding.
Yeah, man. Until we see you guys next week with two more games and some practices, and we'll probably actually be able to hear from, maybe we might be able to hear from Coco like on Thursday or something. Again, I don't know when he goes back. Like we
Hmm.
haven't heard anything definite outside of the fact that he's backing up on
Yep.
on Tuesday. So I'll do my best to get this out as quick as I can. Until we see you next week, take care of yourselves, be well, and do whatever you can to make today a great day.
Hey, Charles.
Hey, Jen.
Hey, where are you going to watch all those Kraken away games?
Cracking away games, making a push. I was thinking of coming here just because Rough and Tumble is the home of Circling Seattle Sports, only if that's okay with you.
I mean, I love that idea. Hope to see you here.